Hi, this is Scott with 4D Tech. In this video, we are going to show you some of the bezel changeovers you may have to do or may want to do during the 4-inch to 8-inch conversion in the 2015 and newer F-150. So if you look at these two bezels, they have these switches at the top here. This is the 4-inch bezel that came out of the truck that we're doing the 4-inch to 8-inch conversion in. This is the 8-inch bezel from 4D Tech. Sometimes you may have different switches than what comes on the bezel depending on how your truck is optioned. If you do have different switches up here, it's very easy to move them over to the bezel. In this case, like we said, these are matching, but for the sake of this video, we'll show you how to move the switches over anyway. So let's do that now. We'll flip the bezels over. And to remove these switches, they push out the front and they just have these tabs on each end of the switch. So we'll take a flat blade screwdriver and with our hands on the front of the bezel and our thumb pushing on the back of the switch, we'll push in on the tab as we push the switch through. And then same with this one. And then we'll do the same on the 8-inch bezel to remove those to be ready to replace them. And then you just take the switches, make sure they are right side up, and slide them in. And you would, for storage sake, put the switches from the other bezel back in the 4-inch bezel. So that's all there is to moving the switches over if you need to maintain your functionality of these switches if they are different. Next, let's talk about the controls down here. You will see that all of our 8-inch bezels for consistency will come with the heated seat switches in the bezel. If you do not have heated seats, you will have two blanks there. Now, you do not need to do anything about this if you don't want to. If this doesn't bother you to have these switches in here, they have no adverse effect on the vehicle whatsoever. You can leave them in there, install this bezel, and not have to do this procedure. If you want your blanks moved over because you do not have heated seats, we're going to show you how to do that. It's pretty simple. It's just a lot of screws. So what we need to do is take this black plastic plate off the back of each of these units. So on the 8-inch one, you see all these silver screws that have to come out. On the 4-inch one, we have to take it out all the way up through here. So we're going to do that first. To do that, you'll use a T10 Torx driver. Once all the screws are removed, we need to remove this black plate from the back of each bezel. Now those switches are right behind this circuit board. All we are going to do is we're just moving the face of the switches. So we'll want to take these screws out. There's 6 of them. Now you're going to want to remember where these screws were when you took them out because there's some holes where the screws come through from the back plate. So you don't want to put these screws back in the wrong place. I would even suggest taking your phone and taking a picture of where the screws are before you take them out. That way you can look at the picture to know exactly what holes the screws go back in. So we are going to remove the 6 screws off of each circuit board. Okay, also keep in mind, the 6 screws from the circuit board are all the same length. And then the screws for the back plate are all the same length as well, but they're different from each other. So as long as you keep one pile of back plate screws and one pile of circuit board screws, you're fine. So the next thing that we'll do is take this board and just lift it straight up. Flip it out of the way. This large black wheel may fall off if you don't put a finger on it, but it's got a little key on it so that it forces you to put it back on the correct way. Once we have that flipped over, we can put our hands around the front of the bezel and push through the plate that the switches are mounted to. So we'll take that, we'll hold it just like it is, and set it over here in front of this bezel. Same thing, we'll take this circuit board, flip it over, keep a finger on the wheel. Now in this case, the rubber pad for the buttons had stayed on the circuit board. Here it stayed on the switches. So we just want to make sure that you're part for part. So we'll put the rubber pad back underneath the switches. You just don't want to end up with no rubber pad or end up with double rubber pads, because then things aren't going to go back together right or work right. So we'll take these switches out. We'll set them aside here. Here are the switches from our truck's panel that we're moving over to the 8-inch panel that's going in. They have a little edge that's got to sit underneath these controls. Push it in, you'll see these little pins pop through, and then we'll just reassemble. So we'll flip the circuit board back over. Put our wheel back on. And then we'll replace our 6 screws in the circuit board. Alright, with the screws back in the circuit board, we'll put our black cover plate back on. And replace those screws as well. Okay, with that panel back in place and all the screws back in, we'll turn over the panel, and now you can see in our 8-inch panel that's going to be going in the vehicle during the conversion, we've now moved the switch buttons over so that you have the blinks where the heated seat switches were. So now you see how to do the bezel modifications for the 4-inch to 8-inch conversion for the 2015 and newer F-150.